Good day everyone, I am Stephanie Grace Siton, and in this video I am talking about basic research framework, basic research process, and action research process. So let's start. Research framework is a very important because this is will serve as the foundation of your research or the structure of your research. Just like when you build a building, you are going to have first the structure so that it will strengthen the foundation of your building. The same with the research. It is really important to have this framework or the structure because without this framework or structure, you cannot assure on what your research will look like. What is a research framework? A research framework provides a structure or model to support your study. So why research framework is important? Because it helps you to determine the appropriate approach and methods that you will apply in your research study. And it also helps you to structure and plan your research activities based on the scope and statement of the problem of your research. So there are basic common research framework, and these are theoretical framework, conceptual framework, and empirical framework. So, a theoretical framework consists of concepts, definitions, and references to related literature, existing theory that is applied in your study. It illustrates an understanding of theories and concepts that are relevant to the topic of your research paper. The selection of a theory should depend on its appropriateness, ease of application, and explanatory power. So the theoretical framework here specify which key variable influence a certain phenomenon. So how to develop a theoretical framework? You just simply test the validity of the existing theory in the relation to specific events, issues, or phenomena. You have to consider the following questions. What is the research problem questions? Problem or questions? Why the selected approach or theory is an applicable solution. When making a theoretical framework, you have to do the following. First, clearly describe the framework, concepts, models, or specific theories of your study, and you have to position your theoretical framework within a broader context or related concepts, models, or theories. And present tense is used when writing about theory, and you have to make sure that your theoretical assumptions as explicit as possible and don't just make what the theory says as given. And these are the guide questions for theoretical frameworks. Among all theories that you will review, which theory is the best tentative answer to your main research problem, and why that theory is the most applicable, and how the assumptions of that theory explain or answer the main research problem. So now let's proceed with a conceptual framework. So when you say conceptual framework, this maps out the actions required for investigating your research study, given the previous knowledge of your research point of view and observations. This represents how particular variables in your study connect with each other. How to develop a conceptual framework. There is no prescribed format on what the conceptual framework like. The conceptual framework of your study only depends on your topic and or main thesis or problem of your research study. The following are the things that you need to consider in doing a conceptual framework. First, decide on what will be your research topic. Second, do a literature review. Third, determine the important variables needed. Fourth, use the variables that connects the potential outcome of your study. So, these are the guide questions in making a conceptual framework. What are the bases of your conceptual framework and theory and related journal study? Second, what is your conceptual framework all about? Third, how the independent variables are related to your dependent variable. Lastly, how the relationship of the variables connects to the potential outcome of your study or your main thesis. So after the conceptual framework, we have here the empirical framework. So your empirical framework illustrates the map or blueprint in testing a hypothesis. using empirical evidence. This can be expressed in a mathematical equation, considering the variables that are used in your research study to answer a research problem. So, how to develop an empirical study? So, you have to consider your main thesis or the research problem and your hypothesis, as well as the variables to be used in our research study. So, what is hypothesis? So, your hypothesis serves as the proposed explanation to answer the specific problem or the main thesis of your research study. So, here in the hypothesis, this can be null or alternative hypothesis. So, when we say null hypothesis, this states that there is no relationship between two phenomenon or variables in the study. Another is we have the alternative hypothesis, which state that there is a relationship between two selected variables in a study. So let's proceed with the basic research process. So this is the basic research process. First thing you do in making your research is of course to select a research topic, because your research topic will serve as the foundation of your research. Next, you are going to identify the research problem or research questions. From those problems and questions, you have to use those as basis for your review of related literature. And after reviewing the related literature, you have this enough understanding about the methods that you are going to use, the main findings from other researchers, the variables that they need to consider for that specific topic. When then you're going to design your research and to design the methods based on this review of related literature, because without doing this you don't know what are you going to do or what are the methods that you are going to partake in order to solve these problems or even to create a research. So if you have already the research design, methods, and the instrument you are going to use specifically in collecting data, then you can collect data, and after collection, you will conduct data analysis, because you have to gain to analyze the data that you have collected, and it should be based on your research problem. And then you are going to present the result. The result could be in tabular or in graphical form. But there are also other researchers used to have a descriptive form in presenting their figures or presenting the results. And after presenting the results, you have to discuss the results not just only by presenting the figures there and let the reader understand that result. So you have to discuss it and to create an implication of results. So that is why you have to use your review of related literature in order to support your findings of your study, and or the result, or in order to support your discussion or your claim in your study, and also to support the findings of your study. And this is the most critical part, because you have to gauge no more on facts now given this result, and from this you are going to summarize your finding, which is also in occurred with the research problem or question. And from this you are going to make a conclusion. So your conclusion should answer the main thesis of your research topic. In doing conclusion, you have to be careful in making your generalization, and based on the conclusion and also the result of your study, and based also with your problem, you're going to make your recommendation. This recommendation serves as the potential solution on how to address the problem, given the results and given the process. And after this, you're going to list the references. This serves as giving credit for the sources. And after you conduct all of this process, you have to evaluate your research paper. So it is really important that you have to invite your research advisor or your peer, or maybe a panel to assess or to evaluate your research paper for improvement. And after this, you are going to finalize your research paper. And after that, you have their final paper and it is ready for publication. This is the basic research process. So why it is basic? Because it serves as the foundation in making your research Lastly, here are 7 important things to do in action research is the process of action research. First, focus selection. Focus selection initiate with a teacher, researcher, or team of action researchers by asking what element do we investigate or practice or of students' learning. The next step in action research is identifying the beliefs and values and theoretical perspectives which the researchers hold about their focus. For example, if the teachers are concerned about the rising responsible classroom behaviors, then it will be helpful for them to start by clarifying which approach will work best. Should a teacher use punishments and rewards system, or should the student be allowed to experience the natural consequences of their behaviors, or should a teacher use some other strategy? Third, identification of research question. Once the selection of focus area has been made and the perspective and beliefs of the researchers about that focus are clarified, then the next step is to generate the research questions that are meant to guide inquiry. Fourth, data collection. Data collection is the most intimidating part of all the steps of the action research process for an overworked teacher. Open questions are asked from the teachers about where they can find time to develop reliable and valid instruments to collect data. Teachers see these events happening in front of their eyes and they generally record in their gradebook. Fifth, data analysis. Data analysis usually implies complex statistical calculation, but this is rarely true in case of an action researcher. There may be user-friendly procedures that can help the practitioner for the identification of patterns and trends in the action research data. Usually, the teachers ask 2 questions in this method: the story told by this data and why did this story play this way. 6. Result of reporting. The most common areas for sharing action research is in faculty meeting, lunch seminars, and teachers' conferences. It is observed that every year, many more teachers are contributing in writing their work for publication to develop to fulfill the requirements. Curious perspective of the techniques teachers selected to record on research. The fact that they are making a valuable contribution to the knowledge base about regular learning and teaching is the more rewarding part of their job. Lastly, informed action. Action planning, also known as taking informed action, is the final step in the process of action research. It is very familiar to the teachers, whether a teacher writes plan for a lesson or develops academic program. They usually engage in the planning process. Whenever a single piece of data is uncovered, the teacher researcher will have more confidence in subsequent steps. All teaching in general is classified as trial and error, and it is found out that the researcher process liberates them from repeating the mistakes. More importantly, whatever the improvements of practice, action researcher get reliable and valid data. In conclusion, I hope that you will be able to learn more about basic research framework, basic research process, and action research process. Again, thank you for listening in this video. I hope that you've gained new learnings.